Hello and welcome to Tutorial Tuesdays. I apologize for missing last week, but I had a bit of car trouble in which I slid on the ice and sort of smashed up my car on the fence on the median on the highway. So that was not very fun, and I am now in the market for a new car. I'm thinking Honda Civic Hybrid. If you have any recommendations, leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So this week we are going to be focusing on retopologization. I think that's a word, I'm not actually positive, but oh shoot, I did not mean to do that. Anyway, retopo is the art of taking a high poly mesh such as this face of Tan that we have. Look at all of these polygons. There are so many polygons there. There are like more polygons there than I can count on 10 hands. And retopoing it takes it and turns it into a low poly mesh. And that's not the only benefit. Another benefit to having a low poly mesh is you get to have nice edge loops, so he's easily animatable or riggable, so we'll eventually be able to take our Tan and open his mouth, make him smile, do whatever we want with him. That sounds pretty mean, actually, now that I think about it. But let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and hide everything else here on another layer, and I'm going to create a plane. You can see the screencast keys down here in the corner, and you can keep up with me that way. I'm going to go ahead and put the camera on that layer too, and Alt-G to move the plane back to the center. Then I'm going to delete everything on the plane, and to retopo, we are going to want to take our object and turn on X-ray so it's always in front, at least for the meantime. So to retopo, there are a few neat tricks. First of all, you want to turn on snapping, or at least switch snapping to face. So now we can create vertices like so, and they don't match up to the face. But we can click this little button here, select all of them, and hold G, and then hit Control, and bam! These vertices now snapped to the face. So that is essentially how you retopo. We're going to draw new mesh onto the object. You can also do this using grease pencil, but I prefer to do it this old-fashioned way. So I'm going to go ahead and start by drawing a nice loop here around the eye. We want to make sure the vertices match so the eyelids will close properly if we ever decide to rig this. And again, those aren't going to match up, so we can take all of this and hold Control when we're moving it, and bam, they snap. So then I'm going to take this and extrude outwards, hit G, and snap it again. Every time I'm moving stuff, I'm holding Control, by the way. It doesn't show up in the screencast keys because I'm in the middle of an action. But we can hold Control just like so, and get this nice edge loop around the eye. So, talking a bit about good topology, you want to have good edge rings wherever the mesh is going to deform. I'm not claiming here to be the end-all be-all authority on mesh topology, and I'm probably not even a master at it. Every time I've modeled characters for people, their riggers have made me go back and fix stuff, which is totally cool because that's how it works in the industry too, from what I understand. But I do understand that rings are good because they allow for good deformation, so we want to focus on getting some good nice rings around the eyes and some good nice rings around the mouth. So we're going to extrude this again, hold G, hit Control, and that should snap to the mesh all nice like that. We can move this one down here, sort of tighten up this area by the eye. This is coming out like super low poly. We're going to up the poly on that. By the way, this tutorial is going to probably not finish the retopology on this. I'll let you all do that on your own. I just want to show you retopology in general. And this video is more of a me retopologizing and you watching rather than an actual tutorial. But I hope you learned some things no less. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude out here, over here. And we want to go ahead and turn on mirroring. So my Tan has his mouth skewed and the eyes and stuff don't match up absolutely perfectly, but that's quite alright. We'll retopo one side and then we can do all of that stuff later. So I'm going to hit mirror and clipping. What clipping does is it will not let you go past the center of the mesh when you're moving stuff, which is very useful for snapping stuff together. So you can see that this is coming along quite nicely here. And then we want to take this loop minus these edges, extrude, oh, I missed an edge, extrude and scale and scale up. And then a lot of retopo is tweaking, so we want to tweak this to make sure the edge flow is nice and neat. So we want this mask here because that again allows for good deformation. I don't know the actual scientific reasoning behind it, and I don't claim to, but I know that it works. So now we've got this mask sort of matching up with him. We can go ahead and turn on some subdivision surface to see what that's looking like. And then we can take this and, I'm going to go ahead and download some face topology reference because it has been a while since I have done this, and I don't want to lead you in the wrong direction. I mean, if you're going to be retopoing, I didn't do it before the tutorial because I only have 2020 hindsight vision, not 2020 forward vision, whatever you would call that. That was a South Park reference, by the way, the whole hindsight vision thing. But I'm not perfect at this, so it's always, three always is there. That means it's important. It is always good to have reference when you're working on retopo because there are people out in the industry that have created fantastic reference for us to use, and they know a lot more about this stuff than I can ever claim to. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this, and I will be right back. Okay, so as you can see, I downloaded some reference. This one is pretty decent. You can see that we have this mask around here, just like we created. They have two subdivisions here. We can add that later if we really want to. And very, very importantly, notice these loops going around down here that will allow for good mouth deformations. Now, another loop that I've always done personally is I create some topology up here, and then I use that. Again, I'm holding control every time I'm moving any of this, but I use this to go down here and around the base of the chin. I saw this once. I've only seen it once, I think, in reference, but it's worked pretty well for me in general. So I'm going to go ahead and subdivide this, hold control while dragging this down here, and we'll go ahead and connect this here. And again, holding control every time I'm moving stuff. And we want to try to match the edge flow of our sculpt as well. That's very important because we want it to resemble our sculpt, and we have some nice detail right here that I'm not currently matching, but we'll figure out how to match that in a little bit. So again, we want this edge loop to match up with our eyes over here. So let's go ahead and create a face there. You can create faces by hitting F if you're new to all of this, although this tutorial is really for more intermediate Blender users, so if you're new to Blender, that is perfectly fine. I appreciate you watching this, but there might be some things that you don't quite get yet. So I'm just going to sort of retopo and talk while I retopo. So crashing my car was pretty frustrating. Not gonna lie. But on the bright side of things, I was looking to buy a new car sometime soon anyway. Now when you have an n-gon like this, look at this awful polygon with no subdivision between right here. Normally people hit F to join things, but when you're working with n-gons, that doesn't work. You'll notice that just creates an edge and it's not actually attached to the face. So to create a bridge on the face, you can hit J, and that will fix that right up. So I'm just going to sort of work around here, and I'm going to go ahead and make a face right here. That is probably completely wrong, but it does lend pretty well to our shape. Again, this is all about, a lot of people are like super sticklers for like perfect topology, but every reference for topology that I have ever looked at has been extremely different. There's never been a topology reference that is identical. There's no perfect way to do this. Those are the same people that are complaining about n-gons in hard surface models when there are plenty of workarounds to make n-gons completely viable when you're working with hard surface models. I am probably going to get blacklisted from the industry for saying that, but whatever. I mean, if it looks good, it looks good. If it works, it works. That's all it really comes down to. However, if you are working with a rigger that is not you, The rigger's word is God, and you should listen to them with zero doubts and do whatever they say, because their job, I guarantee you, is a hell of a lot harder than your job as the modeler. You just have to make it look good. They have to make it deform and animate well, and that is a pain in the neck, let me tell you. Rigging is not my thing. Some people really enjoy weight painting for some reason, though, which I find interesting. I think we call those robots. Let's go ahead and create another loop here and subdivide. And we can always, if you mess up, the brilliant thing about 3D is that this isn't in oil paint where it's hard to fix mistakes. You can always just go back and fix it however you please. So I think I'm going to have this come around for one more loop around the eyes. I might be going a bit excessive here, but then we're going to start on the mouth. It's good to start with the eyes, go into the mouth, and then sort of work from there, connecting those two main important things, because that's where all of the emotion in the acting and the animating comes from. The eyes and the mouth. It's also a very good thing to keep your faces uniform. So for instance, these are much thinner than these. So unless we wanted to create a crease, we really want to try to uniform out the size of these faces, and squares are fantastic for deformation. These are all rectangles right now, and I probably have some people watching and going, "What do you think you're doing?" But that's quite alright. Again, I'm not claiming to be the end-all, be-all resource for retopologization or anything like that. I just know a thing or two, and that is all I am claiming. Whew. So it looks like we probably want to move some of these loops up, actually. If you select some edges and double-click G, then it's constrained to edge sliding, which is nice because then you can't like drag it out and get weird shapes. If you're edge sliding, it is constrained. So I'm going to start to move some of these rings up here, and I'm going to hide this for a second. We really want to match like right here, and a good way to match places up is to place your 3D cursor there, unhide it, and be like, aha, I want an edge loop right around there. I just got a text, you probably heard the buzzing. That's quite alright, I can ignore it, don't text, and retopo. Alright, so this is looking pretty cool. We're getting a nice retopoed low poly version of Ton. And when you're retopologizing, you never have to worry about getting the full amount of detail from your sculpt, because I'm going to break the news to you right now that that is just straight up not possible. Because the goal is to get less polygons, and more polygons equals more detail. So how you get the detail after you've sculpted it and retopologized it is then you bake your high poly mesh onto the low poly mesh to get all of the fine details like pores and stuff. Now this was a speed sculpt, so there's not a whole lot of that going on, but there is some. Ooh, that was weird. I think it was trying to stick to itself because of the X-ray. Superman X-ray Blender Vision. Another cool thing about Blender that I could never figure out how to do in Maya is you can slide vertices by double-clicking G as well, and they will stick to the edge that they're sliding along, which is incredibly useful. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this edge because it's not working out for me too well, and I'm going to subdivide this and add another face. And we can add another loop here, add a face here. This is all about playing around until you get something to work. The fun part about Retopo is that it's really like a fun puzzle, just figuring out how to get the topology to work to the best of your ability. And it looks like, because of the tight amount of edges here, we're going to circle select all these because I wasn't paying attention to sticking them to the mesh, but because of the tight amount of edges here, we are getting the nice shape around the eyes, which is pretty nice. This is turning out to be a pretty high poly mesh, but still way, way lower poly than our sculpt ever could have hoped to be. I'm crushing my sculpt's dreams right now, but it doesn't have dreams because it's just a piece of digital clay, so that is quite alright. You have my permission to crush your sculpture's dreams. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on the mouth here. Oh, by the way, if you have stuff selected like this and you control click, it will extrude it. So if you're going to control click to create new vertices like I've been doing, make sure nothing is selected. So it looks like the mouth is going to, our mouth is going to be pretty low, and we'll fix that later after retopologizing. It's going to be low because the center of the mouth is right here, so it should go across like this, but the corner for ours is right here, which is what we're retopoing to. So we can fix that later after it's all retopologized fairly easily. I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm just going to create a nice face right here, stick that to the mesh, take that mesh, no, I'm not sticking it to it in that way, I'm sticking it to it like glue. Alright, he's going to have a really weird mouth when he's retopoed until we fix it. But that is the beauty of having a retopoed model. It is going to be super easy to mess with. So then for the mouth, I'm just going to sort of extrude around here and hold control and create some faces. And these faces are going to be the ugliest faces you've ever seen because I did not stick these to the mesh yet. And that is a very easy fix because what we can do is just select these magical faces and we can hold control to stick them to the mesh. Bam, we have an outline of a mouth. We don't have an actual mouth, but that's quite alright because then we can take this and extrude it inward in a little bit. I'm going to continue making the outside of the mouth a little bit more high poly so it is easier to animate with. And again, when you're retopoing, you always want to make sure that the edge loops on the top and the bottom match up because that makes rigging much easier when like the mouth closes. If the edges don't match up, then the mouth isn't going to close all the way or properly or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and create some loops around here just to match up with this. Then I'm going to subdivide this and J to connect that, which is quite cool. Then I'm just going to sort of extrude around here to get another loop around the mouth. Notice how many loops they have around the mouth. They have a lot of loops around the mouth. I didn't count them. You can count them while you're bored watching this retopologization video. This is a long, tedious process. That's what it is, and we're probably not even going to finish tonight, and I'm not going to bore you by trying to finish in this video. Again, I'm just trying to show you a good starting point for retopo, and I'll let you all sort of use some reference and figure out the rest on your own merits. So we're going to move this loop up a little bit. We can edge slide this one up. And we're going to go ahead and use this area right here to sort of create a nice loop that goes all the way down here and around and to the base of the chin, because that seems like a good deformation to have. And we want to make sure that these match up because we're going to create faces. Very cool. And we can always add more faces later. So I'm just going to sort of do this until it looks pretty decent. You notice it's not matching up perfectly to the chin, and that's because we need more subdivisions. So now it matches a bit closer to our outline. Very cool. We're getting a ton, and he's going to be animatable. Next week, after I finish retopoing this, I'm going to either do something completely different for the tutorial, or I am going to teach you how to do some basic facial rigging, which should be pretty fun, because there are a lot of misconceptions on facial rigging out there. A lot of them are wrong, and I like to avoid people being wrong. We're going to sort of connect this here. And the beautiful thing about retopo is you don't have to worry about too much about lining stuff up, because you just hold control and it automatically snaps to the face. It's just like TopoGun, which is professional retopo software. And there is a CG Cookie plugin for retopo that is very similar to TopoGun, where you can just draw a line around something like a neck or an arm, and it automatically creates tubes and edge loops for you. That's not horribly useful in our case for doing a face, but if we had sculpted out the arms and stuff, That plugin is fantastic. I have it, I've used it, I just hit F there instead of J. But I've used their plugin and it is gorgeous, totally worth the down payment. I think I paid like 30 bucks for it, and that is like coffee money if you drink coffee, which I don't, so I used my coffee money to get a Retopo plugin instead. So let's just keep retopoing around here, all up in this area. There's no face here, so we're going to create one and then sort of face this area up like so. J to connect that. Very cool. We are getting a neat high-ish poly face. Not high poly because the sculpt was high poly, but it is definitely high-ish. So extrude around here. We want to try to make this loop match up with that wrinkle, because otherwise it will not look right. Although a lot of the wrinkle detail can be added in later via textures, which is also quite alright. Alright, let's continue retopologizing. I think we can get one more. No, this guy's going to come down around here. So what's going to happen is I'm going to subdivide right here, add this face here because it was just asking for it. And then we are going to take this guy and create one giant ingon and leave it like that. I'm actually kidding. We would never leave an ingon in an organic animation mesh. If you're making a mesh that you are planning on deforming later, never ever use ingons, especially in areas that are going to be deformed. That is a huge, huge no-no. Not no-no. No-no is a friend of mine. No-no is what this would be if we left that ingon there. Then we can sort of take this and create this area right here, subdivide it, create a face right there. Probably going to have to add some more subdivisions to the nose. And this is where I start to lack a little bit of knowledge. The nose area is always a little bit tough for me, along with the ears. The nose and the ears, man, those are the toughest. So I will commonly, I'll show you this after I get a little bit more retopo here done. I'm going to make this video probably like an hour long and then peace out because there's a debate that I want to watch tonight between the head of the Creationist Museum and Bill Nye the Science Guy. And I am not a creationist personally, so I think it will be fairly entertaining, said Chris, very weirdly because he was paying more attention to his mesh than what he was saying in real life. Very cool. So I'm trying to get some of this wrinkle detail in here, and again, feel free to yell at me if you hate my topology job. That is totally cool, but I'm just doing what will work for my facial rig. You might have something that works way better, and that's cool, and I want to hear all about it, but please be polite. A lot of problems on the internet could be solved if people would just learn some manners. Alright, this is looking like a head. This area always baffles me a little bit. Generally, you want to take the center three of the eye ring and extend them backwards. It looks like they take this one and extend it backwards as well, so we'll go ahead and follow our reference, which may or may not be perfect, mind you. So I'm going to subdivide this a little bit. I think I ended up with too many vertices there, and so I'm going to dissolve that vertice. J, and hold control while I drag this to snap it to the mesh. Always, always holding control. And I think we can subdivide this and subdivide this and sort of do this number here. I don't know why a lot of people, when BMesh came out, a lot of people were like, why would you ever use ingons anyway? But they're super useful for just getting faces built and then figuring out your topology later. Like, I'm just going to select this whole thing and make a face, and bam. And I can subdivide you, bam. and I can subdivide you. Bam. I can subdivide you. Bam. I'm going to say bam a lot apparently tonight. So this is looking pretty good right up in here. Although I would prefer it if this came around as a loop. So I'm going to merge these three vertices right here. So we get this nice jaw loop that comes right around down here, around the chin. Again, I don't think that one is absolutely necessary or mandatory or even heard of in some weird third world countries, but it is a loop that I personally like to add. So there we have it. We have a face. Let's go ahead and focus on the nose here, which is always a little bit complicated. And I'm going to turn off the subdivision surface so we can see what's going on here. Another thing you can do is you can turn on subdivision surface like this, but then that's not a horribly accurate representation of where your vertices actually are, so I prefer to work in hard mode and just sort of know what's going to happen with my verts. They my verts, brah. So we have a nice nose here. One loop that I like to add that I haven't seen anybody else really do, but I like to add it around the nose right here. Just right around the nostrils, because that gives us a bit of freedom and leeway. Then we can take these vertices and merge them. It gives us a little bit of a star here, which are frowned upon in some cultures, but it also gives us this nice loop around the nose. Which I personally like. You can, again, feel free to yell at me and tell me how wrong I am, but it has worked out pretty nicely for me in the past. So then I'm just going to sort of extrude this in. This is how I've always done noses. It's a little bit messy here. We can add more loops to make it a bit cleaner. Same here. Then we can take this. The beautiful thing about having that loop is this is now like its own little segment of the face and won't interfere with our mouth by adding extra geometry going around here. We can always add more loops that go up into the nostrils, because I'm not even going to close the nostrils off. I'm just going to extrude them in and forget about them. Forget about it. We'll add another loop here just for some nice smoothness, which will also allow us some nice wrinkles up here later for animation purposes. And I'm just going to sort of, we can always tweak this later after retopo, of course. But there we have sort of a nostril type area. And we can sort of take this and bring it up without holding control to get a nice nostril extrusion in there. And this is not very smooth of a transition at all. It's quite sharp. But let's go ahead and move this in, which means we can then slide this in. And now we have a much smoother, nicer nose area. And we can take our loop that goes around the nose and make it more uniform with the rest of the mesh so we don't get any sharp edges on the nose. Very cool. Now we have a nose. Oh, that loop also provides some sharpness down here at the transition between the nose and the mouth. So then we can take our mouth and even up the subdivisions on top and bottom and then sort of make this a bit more uniform. I mean, right now our mesh is, it looks pretty good when it's smoothed, but it's actually a bit of a disaster because none of these faces are super uniform or anything. And there is a friend of mine from SCAD. SCAD is the Savannah College of Art and Design where I went to school. He would yell at me so hard right now for how messy these faces are. You really want these to be nice, smooth, and uniform. You know who you are. Then I'm going to take this and extrude inward, like so. Scale, or I extruded then scaled inward. Then we can sort of take these and move them over on the x-axis. Same with these, so they match up with our subdivisions. But now we have this mouth that is starting to form up, rather than just a hole in the face. And when you get into making mouths, we'll work on this, or you all can work on it after retopo. I'm not going to work on it because I don't want to waste your time tonight. But generally what you do is you take it and extrude it inward, and then you make a big bag on the inside of the mouth, and that's where you put the teeth and stuff. Quite useful for teeth. Like, it would be nice if our character had teeth, right? So I'm going to take this and extrude it in one more time. Another way you can approach this is just scaling it all the way in and then adding edge loops. Probably would have been easier now that I think about it. And we're just going to sort of move this in to where it meets up, like so. I'm sorry, I'm not talking. I'm pretty focused on this hardcore retopologization. Ooh, that's weird. You can always get issues like that when you're retopoing the high-res sculpted mesh, and that is because some faces have not been stuck to the mesh. Or maybe your mesh, maybe your subdivisions on your retopo are not high enough. But in general, we are getting this nice-looking Tan face, which is not going to look a whole lot like him until it's textured with all of the wrinkles and stuff that we sculpted. I got contacted by a website to upload my model of Tan, so I'm probably going to end up uploading a decimated version of the high-res sculpt, just to sort of, you know, keep all of the detail. It'll be a little bit laggy in the browser, but that is quite alright. So now we have this nice retopologized face here. Let's continue on and show you how I do the head. It's only been 30 minutes. Wow, time flies when you're doing tedious work. It looks like we can sort of take this and extrude it up and then extrude it over like so. And that will get rid of a lot of the subdivisions here and shouldn't affect our deformation too much. You might even want to take this and move it down. Then we can extrude, 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 select all of these vertices, or switch to edge mode so we can bridge, space, bridge. I don't actually know the hotkey for that, or if there is one. If you know it, feel free to leave it in the comments. We're all learning from each other. I am not the master. I am just a guy that is making videos of how to use Blender how I've been doing it. You could be doing it way better than me, and that is totally cool. I can learn from you. We will all learn from each other, and that is what this community is all about. Alright, so this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky, because I have the hair sculpted in, and we don't want to model the hair since we're going to want to add real hair later. So I'm going to drag this up, retopo it, extrude this back here, and then move it down to where I think the hair would be. We're going to sort of create our own skull here, I guess. Seems cool to me. And how messy the top of the head is matters, but it doesn't matter that much because it's going to be hidden by the hair. So once we get back down here, we can start retopoing again by holding control when we move stuff. And that will give us a nice neck area. We're probably going to end up deleting some of these edge loops later, just to match up subdivision amounts. This does not match up at all with where the skull would be, so I'm going to drag these up a bit and do the same back here. Make it nice and smooth. Alright, so now we have our skull sort of extruding back. And then add a few more subdivisions here. We can extrude and retopo around the neck. Like so. That neck totally matches up with the mesh. Isn't that beautiful? That was sarcasm in case you couldn't tell. It doesn't match up because of our subdivision surface modifier and because we don't have nearly enough subdivisions. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and turn off X-ray now because it's starting to get in the way of seeing our base mesh. And that's ugly. If you know a trick for retopoing and not having to X-ray, that'd be pretty cool. I'm going to X-ray it again and just sort of wing it. So we'll create one giant n-gon here and subdivide this until we get something that looks cool. There are much better ways to approach this, but this is how I personally like to do it. I think it's cool to cut up big polygons and watch them not suck. Create an edge loop, retopo. Oh geez. One of those went to the center, so I'm going to do it from the front instead. So now, the downfall to what I just did is now we have to smooth this out nice and neat. Like so, and we also are going to need to make this much smoother. Like so. Alright. And we can select all of these, hit G, Control, and that will snap like so. We can create another edge loop, G, Control. Sort of make these a bit more uniform. And now we're getting a nice chin, although we are missing a bit of chin detail, so we're going to want to add some more subdivisions here. And then we can extrude this guy up, try to match this crease right here of our sculpt, and sort of just retopo. Like so. And it looks like we have a bit of a bump here, so, oh shoot. Never do it from the side if you have all these selected, because some of them are bound to go straight to the center line where we have clipping on. Make these sort of match up going around the jawline. Okay. I thought I went into edit mode on the sculpt, and that would have been a disaster area 51, because it would have taken forever since there are so many polygons, and my computer is older than my grandma. No, it's not, but it is in computer years. And we can add an edge loop later after we've gotten this all figured out. Oh, right, we can just select these edges since it all matches up and do a bridge, which saves a lot of time, but I usually don't do it just because I forget. I'm a forgetful Frederick, although my name is Chris. See how forgetful I am? I just forgot my own name, which was a joke if you didn't catch it. I didn't really forget my own name. Alright. Look at this face. It is a face, for sure. I'm pretty sure it's a face. And it goes back into a skull. So you'll notice this doesn't look a whole lot like Tan anymore, and that's because we're lacking textures, we're lacking detail, we're lacking all of the high quality wrinkles and stuff. But in general, this is how you retopo. This tutorial was not much of a tutorial, and I apologize for that. Ah, shoot. Alright, so this tutorial again was not much of a tutorial. It's more of watching my process for retopologization, but hopefully you learned a few things. I'm not ending it quite yet. I don't know why I'm talking like I am, because I would like to at least do the ear before I leave you all to the wolves. So let's go ahead and do the ear, and then I'll let you sort of fill in the gaps, because retopo is tedious and I'm not going to make you watch all of this, because that sounds painful. Alright, so we're going to sort of create a loop around here. There's probably a much better way to do this, by the way, but I'm just going to create a retopo loop around here. and connect it wherever I see fit, which seems like maybe about like right there. Seems pretty good. Then I'm gonna sort of create some faces around here and try to match up my topology. And we are about to win the ugliest ear of the year. Wow, that's a lot harder to say than you would think. Ear of the year. But yeah, we're about to win the ugliest ear of the year award. So we're gonna select some edges here, and I guess we'll bridge those like so. And now the ear has no back to it, but we can fix that just by doing this and retopoing it. Which we can exaggerate that later on our model. I mean, this is obviously going to indent much further. We can fix you all. Correction, not me. I'll leave that up to you if you're sculpting a person. But you can fix a lot of that and add loops wherever you desire after you've gotten the basic retopo done. So this looks like we might have too many edges here to connect there. So I'm going to sort of make these part ways like so, like a boss. Alrighty. I've never honestly done like realistically modeled ears before, so all of this is probably way wrong. This whole tutorial is me telling you how wrong I am. How great is that? Just gonna sort of extrude this in. I mean, the ears don't deform a lot, so they don't have to be super clean or anything. Again, probably getting blacklisted as we speak for saying such nonsense, but that is how I feel. This is a toughie right here. Let's just create an n-gon for the meantime and fix it later. I'm totally gonna forget to fix that later. This is a tough one. Let's create a loop there. Subdivide that. Again, a lot of this retopo stuff is problem solving. Hey, that didn't turn out too shabby. That might just work for us. And then the inside is where it gets difficult, and I might use some n-gons and tries, and you can feel free to crucify me for it, but not literally, because I like to live at least until I'm 60. I'd like to live much longer than that, honestly. But it looks like we're going to want to bump right here. So you can go ahead and add a subdivision right there and make that a face. Huh. This is a toughie. I'm just going to sort of go around the features and then try to make it not look like crap later. Topology-wise. Well, that's a face. A really bad face, but it's a face. Another option we can do, if I'm completely incompetent in this area, which it's starting to shape up to look like, is we can do a low-res ear and then texture in the high-res detail. Because if I'm going to animate Ton, I'm not going to get super close to the ears. I mean, that's kind of a weird shot. Nobody wants to look at your ears. Sorry, Ton, but it's the truth. Almost to quads. Can probably actually get rid of this subdivision and add some mesh in elsewhere later. So now we're back to quads. That's not bad. Unless you were going for the messiest ear of the year award. I am just going to create a giant face here for the meantime. meantime, not permanently, because that would be awful. Can sort of finish these loops around here. Add a subdivision there, which then matching this area up to back here is not going to be that big of a pain because this is all going to be hidden by hair, so it can be as messy and populated with faces as we damn well please. I'm making dinosaur noises. Forgive me. J. Subdivide. J. Is there a face there? Can't really tell. Oh well. Oh, there is not a connection there. Let's connect that. Huh, what is up with that not showing up? Ooh. That's weird. Alright, so I think we can sort of create some edge loops there and subdivide them. What happened to my high-res mesh? It looks like it got hidden through magic and sorcery, because I totally did not hide it. This is like the worst ear model of all time. I would highly recommend going and watching an ear modeling tutorial. There are some good ones out there. But for the meantime, this is how I am going to approach it. Because this is how I sculpted it, which is also probably completely wrong. Wrongo. Ooh, we are getting close to time here. Best way to handle this is just to try to find quads. Which again is a fun puzzle. Don't think of it as anything else, and don't let your friends tell you otherwise. Probably divide that in half. Probably divide this in half. Then we can subdivide this here. This ear modeling is the worst ear of the year. Don't know how many times I'm going to make you tolerate that joke, but it totally is. Of course, that's a quad now. An ugly quad at that, but it is a quad. Then we can create a couple edge loops here, and just stay hush-hush about it. Select all of these, G control, to match up to the mesh better. And bam, we have a really bad ear model. Awesome. And then we can take this, and we can match up to the head. I'm not going to continue to waste your time, and we're out of time here, but that is generally the retopo process, the part of the sculpting process that everybody seems to hate rather than view as a super fun puzzle. Super happy fun puzzle times. So I think after I add this loop in right here, I'm going to sort of leave you all to your own devices. Decimate my Ton model so he's a bit lower res, and then upload him to that website since I promised I would. Cool. So that will conclude this week's Tutorial Tuesdays. Hopefully you learned something. We didn't get to finish the retopologization because retopo takes time. It is a time-consuming process, and after watching the first hard part of getting all of the loops in the right place and doing the really crappy ears, I think you all can handle filling in the rest of the holes. It's all about using quads, having uniform faces, and having good edge flow for deformation. So I'm just going to leave it right there. Next week I'll have an actual tutorial, hopefully on how to actually do things rather than watching me do things. You'll still be watching me do things, but you'll actually learn how to do things rather than picking up a few tips in an hour-long video. But hopefully you enjoyed this, hopefully you got something out of it, and hopefully I will be able to do some facial rigging tutorials next week or sometime in the future. But I'll come up with something cool that you can actually follow along with next week. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you did, and I will see you all later.